Environmental group Parkscape says authorities were warned about the significant risk of fire to the Table Mountain region. Parkscape says mismanagement of Table Mountain National Park has put lives and properties in danger. Chairperson of Parkscape, Nicky Schmidt, joins us now. Nicky, you warned. We see it today still playing out. What was the response when you warned?
You know, the response, there hasn't been a response. That's the problem. That's why we sit with this problem today. We warn repeatedly of homeless people living in the park and the risks that are posed. We warn repeatedly about the fuel load in the park, the alien infestations in the park. And while we see some effort to remove aliens and to do some stack burns, it's insufficient.
And why do you think this is not being tackled? I mean, surely if you raise the alarm, something ought to be done. Whose job is it to take this on?
So Sandparks is multifaceted within its management of this park. So you have different departments and different ranges fulfilling different duties. And they all have to come together to get things right. So what you see is, you see an awful lot of slash and fuel load, and you don't see it being burnt or stack burnt. So, for example, the slopes of Devil's Peak, where this fire has started, it is absolutely littered with old pine trunks and old pine stumps, and it is tinder dry. It was just waiting to go up. You add into that the fact that you've got vagrants making campfires, you have bergwind conditions, and off it goes. And the question you have to ask is, why was that fuel load not burnt? Why was it not stack burnt?
It seems an obvious one, doesn't it? And here we are today with this horrific fire that could have been possibly averted, the extent of it. So what happens now, Nicky? What needs to be done?
Well, they have to look at their management protocols. They've got to look at their fuel reduction burning and their stack burning. They've got to do more of it. They've got to address the issue of homelessness in the park. We know that there've always been people living in the park, but it's got to be managed in a different way. The city itself has got to take responsibility for the social dysfunction that gives rise to homelessness. The park itself has to manage the people living in the park. They've either got to set up campsites or they've got to actually evict them in terms of the National Environmental Management Act. It needs to be done sensitively. It's a sensitive and complex issue. But between the fuel loads, between the alien infestations, between the homeless people making campfires, it is a recipe for disaster. We are sitting in an era of climate change. We've got longer, hotter summers. We have got to address this issue before the entire urban edge goes up in flames. And we're seeing an example of it at this point. We saw it in 2015. We saw it in 2017 in Knysna. This is what happens. We see wildfires raging across Australia, Portugal, America. This is our reality. We, as the public, have to become better educated as well. We have to accept that we live in a fire-dependent biome. Fynbos needs fire.
And Nicky, when you see those pictures that we were just showing now, I mean, it just shows you as well how, Cape Town is enclosed. It's hard to get out if there are fires on all sides, which is, yet another problem. Where does education fit in here?
So education, I think, is multifaceted. The people who are using the park, the people who are living in the park need to understand the consequences of their own actions. The people living on the urban edge have to learn to protect their homes from fire. They've got to ensure their gutters are clear. They've got to ensure they don't have pine trees or palm trees or blue gum trees in their garden. They've got to ensure that they keep gas bottles well away from their homes. We saw exactly what happened to the Rhodes Memorial Restaurant when the gas bottles went up. It's these kind of things. You've got to educate. You've got to raise awareness. People have to accept that we live in this biome that needs to burn. And we have to arrange our lives accordingly. And I speak from personal experience. The 2015 fires stopped 30 meters behind my home. And I was evacuated at 3 in the morning. I know this from personal experience, so I feel very strongly about it. We, as residents, can take certain steps, but the authorities have to manage the process. They've got to have better protocols.
I hope they're listening. Nicky Schmidt, thank you very much.